can you speak about how Selassie provided military training, funding, and ammunition to other African countries?
Definitely. This is again when we talk about the Pan-African credential. When people talk about Haile Selassie being a sellout, this is why we have to laugh at them and know that they don't know what they're talking about, because His Majesty not only did he fight on the battlefield. Let's start there. His Majesty fought on the battlefield against a colonizing power. I want any of the detractors of His Haile Selassie to show me their battle experience against white supremacy with gun and them thing there. And some detractors will say, well, he was on the battlefield, it was staged, you know. They put him in the nice part. I would tell him, go on a battlefield in war and go try stage some things. Go to Ukraine right now and see where you can stage. Go to Gaza Strip right now and go stage some selfies and some photo up. That's foolishness. He was in the battle on the front lines, well documented, firing gun, dropping planes from the sky, mustard gas being poured. So in terms of fighting for Africa, fighting for the Pan-African ideal, His Majesty fought. So this is the position from which the Pan-African mindset comes from. We also have to talk about his assistance to the UNIA in the 1920s as Rastafari, sending financial support to the UNIA, inviting UNIA members to come to Ethiopia to help to develop. That was stopped by the State Department for a large part, but we have people like the Ford family who wrote the UNIA anthem from Barbados, who migrated to Ethiopia, who built the first co-ed schools who are Hebrew Israelites. So we know that UNIA members did travel to Ethiopia and set up shop. A lot of them left with the Italian invasion. The Ford family stayed. Big up the Ford family. That being said, so the Pan-African credential is established from the 20s. So a lot of people like to have this narrative, His Majesty jumped on the bandwagon in the 60s when Africa was being liberated. Again, foolishness. Shashamane land was granted in 1948 when Nkrumah and these people were young youths. His Majesty was granting land. And you look at the EWF Charter, what does it say? The Ethiopian World Federation Charter, which was the organization set to administer that land. It says that this is for the black peoples of the world. First African leader to provide land for the diaspora to return. So I just want to establish the credentials so we can kick away the man them who says His Majesty come on the bandwagon in the 50s and the 60s, trying to jump on the bandwagon. Let's talk about the Mau Mau out of Kenya, who had their staging bases in Ethiopia, which they were able to regroup, be armed, be trained to fight, while His Majesty has good relations with the British and talked to Queen Elizabeth on the phone while arming her opposition in the Mau Mau against British colonial rule. So His Majesty was providing assistance. Let's talk about the paramilitary wing of the ANC, which was established with training and funding and arms from Ethiopia. Let's talk about the first firearm given to Nelson Mandela in the establishment of this paramilitary wing, given to him by His Imperial Majesty. Let's talk about, again, His Majesty taking South Africa to court in The Hague for its violation, funding the liberation armies down in South Africa covertly. I want to big up Chester Higgins, who was on this platform, who talked about, when His Majesty would go overseas to get military assistance from the Western powers, he would always get more arms and things that then Ethiopia could use, so that some of that could be distributed to the African freedom fighters that needed it. Let's talk about Ethiopia sending troops down to the Congo to stabilize Congo after the assassination of Patrice Lumumba with the United Nations. Let's talk about Haile Selassie mediating the war in Biafra. The only man that Ojukwu would talk to in the Biafra war was Haile Selassie, who was able to calm down the tension because some African nations had recognized Biafra. His Majesty had to negotiate with these so that they could get back into good stay with Nigeria. Let's talk about the mediation in Algeria, between Algeria and Morocco, that His Majesty was able to mediate. These are bona fide credentials. I want you to bring up one of your Pan-African friend them who have the same credential. A credential we are dealing with now, you know. I want you to find one of them because the Pan-Africans don't want to talk about His Majesty. So I'm laying out some facts because I want someone to come sit down in this chair and come tell me someone who have more Pan-African credential than His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I. I didn't talk about Africa Hall, the creation of Africa Hall, the headquarters of the OAU, which was built before the OAU was even established, investing millions of dollars so that the OAU would have a home that was not impacted by a colonial power, where down to the stationery was paid for the first 2 years of operation out of the Ethiopian national budget. Which Pan-African have these credentials? And big up Malcolm X, who lived in America, who was not the head of a country, so we can't expect them to do these things. Big up Elijah Muhammad, who was a citizen of America, who did great works. Marcus Garvey, these people did great works as citizens of a colonial power to inspire, but none of them can have the credential of His Imperial Majesty in terms of, again, fighting on the battlefield. Marcus Garvey wore a pretty military uniform, you know. How much gun Marcus Garvey boss? And that's with the most respect to the Honorable Marcus Messiah, because I'm a Garveyite. I have to give respect to Garvey, but how much gun Garvey boss against white supremacy? You know? So when I hear people try to castigate His Majesty or to call in question, and I haven't called everything because I want to come back here next time. I don't want done out everything in a one interview because I like the interview them, you know. But tell me, big up Thomas Sankara, you know what I mean? Remember said them try kill His Majesty a whole heap of time too, and were not successful. So Thomas Sankara is a great Pan-African leader, wasn't able to even implement the levels of reform that His Majesty was able to implement. So I don't see anyone in the annals of African history who have the same bona fide credential of His Imperial Majesty when it talk about what he has done. I didn't talk about the educational system that he established in Ethiopia. I didn't talk about Ethiopian Airline, which connected Africa, the first airline connecting East to West Africa, East to South Africa, all of these things. To this day, Addis Ababa is a hub connecting Africa to each other. We didn't talk about these bona fides in terms of Pan-African credentials. Good friend to Kwame Nkrumah, who called him father of Africa. The first chairman, honorary chairman, there's a reason why those leaders, the founding fathers of Africa, elected Haile Selassie as the first chairman of the OAU. Because of the work that he put in, father of the Rastafari movement, which provided the soundtrack for these liberation movements down the line. Again, is Kadamawi Haile Selassie. And then even after His Majesty disappears from the throne and you have the Derg and the Russian funding the liberation in Angola and things, why could the Derg and these revolutionary support these activities on the continent? Because the military academy is established by His Imperial Majesty. So the legacy, the breadth of accomplishment and achievement in the Pan-African spirit, we've never seen anything like it. And one of the reasons that the Pan-African movement is not stronger is because they try to go around His Majesty. We want to talk about all these other leaders. And again, all due respect to all of our Pan-African ancestors. I love every one of them. But none of them, not one. And again, I'm looking for Dr. This, PhD, what and what, come here, come sit down and tell me, say, you know that Ras you had on your program, I want to address him. And I will come forward again. I come from Sound Clash culture, we can talk about it. You know what I mean? So if you want clash in that way, we can do that. But I don't see no one, my brother, who have the Pan-African credential of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I.